Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover everything and anything to do with the Marvel Universe. From comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Mojoverse to Earth 616 to the Negative Zone to bring you the Marvel Universe. My name is Chris.
I am the podcaster of Mistress Trav Snail.
And Alliance Assemble.
Boom, look at that. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing good, It's Father's Day since we record on Sunday, so happy Father's Day to you, Travis.
Yeah, happy Father's Day, everybody. I hope you didn't hear that. Literally, I have my window open for air, and a crow flew right by.
Oh, nope, didn't hear that.
So, listeners, don't worry. I'm safe. But, yeah, happy Father's Day to you as well, and to, all the listeners.
Odin is watching.
He is, yeah. He's like, oh, you guys better make this a good one, And it's like, sorry, Odin, we have nothing to talk to about you today, but maybe he'll be back in the MCU one day. But,
Yep.
Yeah, it's been another week that we got some news to talk about this week, so that's going to be exciting. What do we got? So it's crazy to think that this is our fourth week. So in a few more days, this has been already going for a month, this podcast, which is crazy. It's so funny that we talked about like the lead up to it, and for me, like for GeekVerse, we were planning for like talking about a year, and then it was months, but now that it's here, it's just like it's already been a month. So that's crazy to think. So for people, if you're new to the show, every Monday, that's me and Chris right now. What we're doing is Marvel Alliance. We're either breaking down a news or topic or comic book club, something to do with the Marvel Universe, as Chris opened up with. Tuesday's DC Alliance. I'm very excited because they're going to be talking about DC Fandome, but they're also talking about there's tons of like Flashpoint rumors and Jeffrey Dean Morgan maybe come back as Batman. So I'm very excited. Like I'm excited as a listener to get that in my feed there. What do you got? Yeah, what do you got going on this Wednesday? I believe it's a retro happening.
Yep, we're doing another retro drop. We're gonna close out. We started with the retro with my very first show with Jordan, talk about Court of Owls. So we're going to do the part 2 of that where we close out with Night and City of Owls. So
perfect.
Jordan will be coming back and doing that retro to close that out. And yeah. It was a fun time to do kind of a 2-parter in the beginning.
Yeah, it was good, and as I had stated last week, or when we were talking about the retro, I love Court of Owls, so it was a fun listen. Thursday this week now is Star Wars Alliance, so you have Nathan and Katie back doing their things. I think they're talking about some books, but they're also breaking down some news, so you look out for that. And Friday, as always, you know what that means. It's animated Superman time. That means I think they're on 10 to 13 now, something like 10 to 12, somewhere like that, but follow along. It's been fun to watch, and then go listen to them. It's a good show, and especially because Greg, he's like, I'm learning all the stuff that he hadn't seen this or Batman the Animated Series, so it's a good perspective to kind of have, like Travis, who is the the icon, the guy that knows all this stuff, and then you got Greg, who's the rookie. He's the veteran and the rookie, so it's good. And if you want to help with this channel, there's a few things you can do. One, support us on Patreon, either $5 tier, the $5 tier. Right now, we have an exclusive Flashpoint episode, so it's myself, Lisa from I Love That Movies, Katie from Slice of Film and Stars Alliance, and Greg from DC Alliance. And that there's so many shows going on, so much in the mouthful. All those people are on the feed right now, but you can go over there. It's kind of timely. We didn't mean all this kind of Flashpoint news to be happening. We just Travis was like, I think our first episode should be Flashpoint. So it was a fun conversation. And then the other thing you can do right now is just drop over and give us a review on any of your Podbay or Pod, whatever listeners it is, podcatchers, specifically if you want to do it on Apple, so we can help chart, and then that helps grow the show and meet many other people. But I think that's everything. We got lots of good stuff going on, and then even now there's tons of news just all around. So it's a good time to be on the feed. Anything you want to say, Chris?
No, I mean, looking forward to some of those episodes dropping every week, just like everyone else. So got some good content. So let's start off with, as we usually do, with kind of reviewing last week's. You want to talk about kind of the results from the fact or fiction polls from last week?
Yeah, let me pull those up right now. I have, those are the different polls. Let's see here. I did not prepare this. I thought we
Nope.
Here we go. So this was last week. So the fans were with you on this one. Scarlet Witch, AK1, will die in phase 4. 80% fiction and 20% fact. So you went fiction on that, I went fact, but the fans are with you, listeners are with you on that one. Within 5 years, the release of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, James Gunn will direct or be announced to direct another MCU film. Fact, 25%, fiction, 75%. It's funny that we both went fiction, but I'm just kind of surprised that is now the majority thought. Like a few years ago, obviously the firing him, but a few years ago you would thought, he's with that family for a while, but it just seems like now everyone's kind of majority is thinking, oh yeah, he's going to direct that, and then it's
Hmm.
over, so it's kind of weird. And then finally, this one was a bit closer. In the next 3 years, there will be an announcement or a release of a new solo game, a la type of Spider-Man PS4, something like that. It'd be a different character. Fact 40%, but fiction one was 60, but that was a close one. So I saw some good discussion about that. And again, that's the one. I hope I'm wrong. I'm hoping that
Oh
I'm
yeah.
hoping right in the middle of this podcast they'll announce, I don't know, the Squirrel Girl game, and I'll be very excited for anything to happen. So
Keep on dreaming. Keep
yeah.
on dreaming.
So you have some fan listener questions that we got from last week, kind of to do with either the podcast or
Yeah.
just in general for Marvel.
Yeah, we'll get to one of we had a fan question from our buddy Tony Walgator,
Mm-hmm.
and he asked, "Do you think we will see the Inhumans again in the MCU within the next two phases?" Um, I would, after the botched TV show at that point, there are people who still like it. At that point, I'm definitely not one of them, but I think the gateway to the Inhumans is the Fantastic Four. So, hopefully we get the Fantastic Four off the ground in the next two phases. Yeah, Fantastic Four does well at that point. I could see it being maybe not, maybe at the end of phase six, maybe in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Fantastic Four is the gateway. So if that does well, I think we're going to get the Inhumans.
It's a tough one because he said two phases. So he's thinking, does he mean including four, or does he mean the two after four? Do you think?
I'm thinking the two after four.
Okay,
So
because
I think if the biggest chance would be the final phase.
yeah, because I think if it was about 4 and 5, I would say no shot right now. So 5 and 6, we're looking at another. Oh, that's another like 8. That's another 4 to 8 years from now. So anything's possible, right? I guess it is like you brought up Fantastic Four. That is a potential gateway. I just wonder if they kind of take the backseat for a little while. And I guess I'd have to ask him, and maybe I will after this podcast, if he means the Inhumans we know and love as far as Medusa and Black Bolt, or is it just Inhumans in general? If it's Inhumans in general, I would say it's not fact or fiction, but I'd say fact because I think that you'll get one character, right? Even if it was like we've joked about a few weeks ago about a Lockjaw or
Yeah.
any Inhuman, right? There's been rumors about some or mutants being used, but they're not going to be, oh, that's the X-Men coming. It's just, oh, they happen to be a mutant, this and that. So any involvement, I'd say yes. But if it's the Inhumans, kind of the main line, I kind of lean towards no. I think you're right with if it happens, it's near the back half. But we have X-Men and Fantastic Four coming, but we also have things that we haven't even met yet that are going to be huge, like the Eternals or
Mhm.
Shang-Chi. These are movies that are going to hopefully kick off franchises, right? So I think they might just let it simmer even for a little longer. I don't think there's a big clamoring for them. I'm somebody that I like the Inhumans enough, but they've never been my thing, and I think I always got a sour taste in my mouth because there was that time when Fox owned obviously X-Men, and now
Mhm.
Disney just owns Fox. But it did feel like Inhumans were Marvel Comics were trying to replace the X-Men with Inhumans, right? And I didn't. That left kind of as a sour taste in my mouth with Inhumans, so I've never kind of gone over that. So I welcome them, but they're very far down on the list as far as things I want to see in the MCU. So I'll say no. I'll say no for the next 2 years if it's the main line.
Yeah, it's close to kind of shoehorn them in, which is what I don't want to have
Mm-hmm.
happen to them because I think kind of like you, they're not the highest property on my list to want to see, but I think what was done was not treating the characters and the franchise well at all.
Yeah. Did
And
you
so it's
watch
one
the full season of that show?
I watched enough.
I still never did. I
I
never.
watched enough.
I've never watched one
Um,
single thing just because those trailers weren't great and it just got torn apart. And I just remember when they announced that, like, oh, we're doing a TV show. It's going to be on IMAX. I'm like, oh, they're really taking a big step
mhm.
here. And it was the complete opposite. So,
Yeah, I mean it's one of those, rare MCU Marvel missteps when it came to that. So I think we will see it, but I'll stick to it in the sense of it'll be if it's anything, it'll be the final phase. I think you bring out a good point. If what kind of are we looking at the royal family? Are we looking at Inhumans in general?
yeah.
If we're looking at Inhumans in general, I think there's a better shot of making it in these next few phases. But if anything, it's going to be that final phase, or like you said, not at all. It'll be later on. So,
Well,
no, good question.
Well, yeah, and that's the last point I'll just say is I also just think there's no big mainstream character that the audience that are just kind of people that aren't even listening to this podcast. I don't think there's
Mhm.
anyone, someone's like, we really need to see this person. Where people, even Fantastic Four, if they've been a lower tier the past few years, like, oh, they know the Thing, they know even Mr.
Mhm.
Fantastic as the stretchy guy. I think Inhumans they're still pretty kind of deep cutish, and that's why we'll be excited to see Eternals, because Eternals I feel like is kind of similar to Guardians, where it's another testing realm. Eternals
Mhm.
is something they even need to sell me on, and I'm a comic reader. It's something that was very low down the list. So again, if they kind of hit it at the park with that one, they've kind of done that with Guardians and Eternals. I usually trust them to do anything MCU. They have a great track record, but Inhumans can be a little tough after quite a bomb. Like when they don't speak about the show, that's when Marvel's kind of a little embarrassed about it. So.
Yeah. So, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. But thanks, Tony, for the question. But we've got some late breaking feedback from last week with our MCU debuts. Before we get to the polls, and that I did have a few reach out, not through direct message at that point. Our friend Brent from Fans and Marvel Fans Without Borders and Marvel Squadcast at Brent Tech Prime. His choices, what he would love to see is Nova, either Sam Alexander or Richard Rider. And his deep pull, what he really would love to see, since he's a huge fan, is Ben Riley. And
Yep.
I would love to see. I'd love to see either one of those. I do appreciate Ben Riley, and I do like Ben Riley. I don't think my fandom compares to Brent's love of the character, um, but he. I think Ben would be great. He also told me that I think we're a few years off, but I also think that Ben Riley would be perfect in Into the Spider-Verse in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Me and him have talked about this many times. That's how we met on SC, and we kind of bonded
Eh.
over. I said, like, right now my hair is bleached blonde because I did Ben Riley for Halloween, and then I just kind of kept it. But I'm a big fan of that character. Again, it's kind of like your pick with Spider Woman. I always wonder. It's tough for me always to pick these Spider characters because I just don't know the future of that relationship. Right? We saw it end
Yeah,
so
and
terribly and then get fixed.
yeah, I mean it's a tough one, especially in a live action. It can be done, but we've got to build it. And
Mm-hmm.
he and I basically said, Miles seems to be kind of the heir apparent whenever if it happens in live action. But Nova's interesting in the sense of you got two, and we just it probably may lean towards the our younger one at
Yeah,
that point.
I would agree. I need you and him to send me because I'm not sure how big of a fandom you are. I don't dislike the character. It's just a character I've never really gleamed on to. I've never been that attached to, and maybe it's because the older one, the younger one at times I've kind of liked, but the most I've read is it was like the 2016-17 run when they kind of had that new squad of Avengers when Miles was on it and Lady Thor and stuff like that, and he was on there. That's the most I've read of him. So for me, I'd be excited because I know he has lots of fans. Personally, it's not a character that excites me that much, but I'm not somebody that dislikes the character. I just don't think I've read the right amount of stuff to really like Nova because I've just always been like, meh, all right. Even I'm kind of like Spider-Man in the Ultimate Show. He's just always like making fun of Nova and like, oh god, here he is. Like that's kind of with me with Nova. So I need to be more educated on him because I haven't attached to him much.
Yeah, I mean Sam is our current Nova in right now, the quote unquote more popular
Yeah.
one, just because he's in the Richard Rider is what the previous Nova at that point. But Sam, we kind of talked about how Marvel likes casting in the sense of you're not just going to do one film or you're going to be part of
Mm-hmm.
something. So casting Sam in the role gives you that opportunity. Casting Richard doesn't preclude you from it, but it just there's always a time attached to that of how long they can be in that character and age. Because how long, if it takes off as a franchise, then you know, looking at Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr., Hemsworth. I mean, you're older, you commit yourself to a long time in the movies. It precludes you from doing other things or your age.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and that's a character we've heard rumors a few times. I think he is. likely for if kind of like the Inhumans. I think in the next two phases, whatever it is, we will see him, whether it's in a solo film or just around. There's been so many rumors over the past few years that they're looking into it, they're working on a thing, and I just feel like he is, like I said, not necessarily with me, but he is. I see him rising in popularity more and more.
Yep.
The younger version, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the older version I didn't attach to, so I need to get more affiliated and give it a better shot. And I usually do, like when movies come out, like with New Mutants, like okay, I'm gonna try and read some, or with like Eternals, go, I'm gonna try and read some, get more affiliated with it. So I think we will see it, and I think that one makes sense. Obviously, it's kind of that joke, but it is Marvel's Green Lantern in a sense, right? It's a space cop deal, but I think I think they can make it different enough that you won't get those comparisons. I think that's just like a Moon Knight and Batman thing where it's on the surface, people go, oh well, that's what it is, and
that's yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, they're a cop. Okay, so
mm-hmm.
that's a space cop. Okay,
Completely different characters. From what I've read of Nova, which is not much, he strikes me nothing like many of the Green Lanterns. But if you're just using Hal specifically, they're not. To me, they're very different characters and whatnot.
And Nova came back. I mean, when I got into learning more about it, was the Annihilation.
Yeah.
Theories at that point. I think that did so much to bring the cosmic universe back to a modern audience that had kind of been lost.
Yeah.
And so that would be something way. But yeah, those are I totally would love to see those. And then our friend Nathan Wobbly Boots 85, he's got a few Hyperion, Black Bolt, Beta Ray Bill, bonus if he could get an X-Men in, he wanted Emma Frost and Tigra.
Oh,
so,
good.
All good choices.
All good choices. I was very scared. Thank you, Nathan. I thought it was gonna be a list of very wild, crazy, like Howard the Duck, or even though we got him, but in a bigger role and stuff. Because Nathan's last batch.
Remember last time he wanted us to cook Howard the Duck, and how would we eat him?
That's true. So yeah, I still owe Nathan a receipt. I'm still gonna send him some weird questions on Star Wars Alliance one time. But yeah, I'd be down. It's funny, Tigra. We're gonna be talking about her a bit later. But yeah, those are all good choices. Also, I picked Beta Ray Bill as well, so I'm kind of on that camp. And yeah, it's Emma Frost. We kind of talked about that in our group chat. She's gonna be a very interesting character because the MCU is not a very over sexualized franchise, maybe because it's Disney, whatever it may be. But even just relationships, sex scenes, those don't really happen in the MCU. So that's a character that I think in comic books, especially in the past, sexualization of characters has been overdone to a great amount. But there is some characters where I feel like her, Poison Ivy, or Harley Quinn, where sexuality is or even someone like Selena Kyle is important to the character. It's not so much just like, oh, we want to draw this really hot looking babe. It's like, no, she uses this as a tool to get her way, to manipulate people. And I think Emma Frost has that. It's just a question of they just maybe have to make that more less about outfits and more about her personality and her kind of words she uses.
Yeah, it's her personality. It's been like that since her introduction. So some artists and writers make it a little more, not
a lot
not
more
kosher these days. Yeah,
yeah.
So, but again, you see other ones that you can use it, but you can use it appropriately, and everyone gets it. It's not just making it seem like she's an object per se.
Yeah.
She has her own purposes behind it. But yeah, those all those would be loved. So you put out a poll. And seeing what what people thought of our choices. You got those current results where we're at right now with
I do. So I have a funny story. So for mine, it was Beta Ray Bill 66%, and then MODOK and the Leader were tied. I kind of had a feeling because even like I said last week, Beta Ray Bill, he's such a popular pick. I almost didn't, but it is just like I am in that fan camp of I do really want to see him. So he was kind of a runaway, and then there was kind of a runaway because I have like a fun story. But so we had your choices up there as far as Wonder Man, Ghost Rider Robert Reyes, and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. She won by 81%. Now, like Chris pointed out, we were telling this probably like
53 votes.
She was winning before, but it was a bit closer. But then I've had this happen with GeekVerse before. Some random Spider-Woman account found it and said, "Come on, fam, let's get her the win. Let's do this." So our Marvel Alliance page has just been like fan bombed by Spider-Woman people, which is great. We like the character, but it was just so funny getting this like all right away. So yeah, that was a little trickery going on in that poll.
We appreciate the recognition, and hopefully if they aren't listeners, hopefully they'll become listeners at that point. They're not just here. But just to be full transparency, Travis and I have absolutely no impact on this. Just to make sure, I'm glad they are very committed to Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. It was she's an awesome character. I like that commitment at that point, but I was just like, oh my gosh, what has happened?
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
see, I got to reveal something. No, I send this podcast every week to Kevin Feige. He loves it, and he's taken zero of our suggestions, but it's great to know that he listens. So there you go, fans.
yep. But some of the comments in it, Walkator93 said if it was Ultimate Jessica Drew, then her, mainly because that means we will be getting a Clone Saga type movie. If not, Ghost Rider, and enjoying everything I'm reading about him. From our friend Taylor. Taylor the Field. I don't know. I want specifically Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider period would be amazing, which basically I would kind of said the same thing, but if I had to pick Robbie Reyes, but he also agrees with me. They want to jump the shark. He says Cosmic Ghost Rider 2 would be awesome.
He's also lying though, because he just wants Nick Cage back. I know this as a fact. As somebody, okay. he has been. I have been friends with him for 5 years. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the best man at his wedding. I know for a fact he would probably sacrifice me just to get Nick Cage back at Ghost Rider.
Okay.
Legitimately, Chris, Spirit of Vengeance is his favorite Marvel movie. He is. Taylor Field is on another spectrum. Oh yeah, he loves those movies. We did a watch along once, and he loves them, unabashedly loves them. So he would.
That's okay.
Oh yeah,
okay.
we don't judge.
I will disagree, and I was very vehement on my disagreement of that. But
he knows. He knows. He knows he's in the minority. But that's the thing with Taylor Field. He has given. We've been doing the podcast for 5 years, and he has given, I think, only 3 movies a negative review, and all of them have just been kind of undering, except for Jigsaw, which is a sequel to Saw. He gave like a 2 out of 10, but he is the most kind of glass half full type of guy. So
hey, gotta love what you love at that point.
Oh yeah,
I fully agree with that. So then we got some of our Spider-Woman fans at DDORR22000. Jessica Drew's backstory and friendships is so interesting. She would be a great addition. At Sharpie Marker CX, Cindy Moon and Silk. That's a good poll.
Yeah, it's funny because I thought we had heard rumors a few years ago that they were doing a Silk movie, and obviously with Sony, they kind of just disappeared. But that did interest me, so I would be down more than Jackpot or Madam Web to revisit that, because she has a very interesting backstory.
It would be a nice little team up, maybe with Gwen, Gwen Stacy as Spider-Gwen.
Yeah.
So, then we got some more from at. Looks like we've got some interesting handles of who got the Jessica Drew first. Jess Drew SW, Jessica Drew for sure. At Carolina Cam BRCF, Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. And then this one's at Jessica Drew SW, the original and unique Spider-Woman, her friendship with Carol, and the backstory. So again, love that commitment to Spider-Woman, Jessica Drew. I think, a lot of my friends definitely want to see it. It kind of goes neck and neck between Jessica Drew out of these choices and Ghost Rider, but I would definitely, I would lean a little bit more. My vote is a Ghost Rider, but Jessica Drew does not mean it's a distant second at all. It's pretty much neck and neck between her and Ghost Rider.
Yeah, no, I pretty much agree with you. So yeah, thanks to everyone that, if you're a listener or not, hopefully you are now, but thanks for sending those questions and voting. As every week, go to Marvel A Podcast, and you can do anything you want as far as these polls, as far as commenting. Just let us know. Keep it nice, civil, safe, and which has been great so far. These past, we're going a month, and everyone that we've talked to so far has been great and friendly. So that's not really been a problem here. So if we keep it up, that's great. That's the community we want. So thank you.
Well, you had a few comments on yours, and you had some love from MODOK.
Yeah, Multimedia Headquarters. Yeah, he was saying at Multimedia HQ said, absolutely would love to see MODOK in live action. Love these wacky extraterrestrial villains. Also Mojo, the Savage Land. Hope the MCU X-Men get into that. I think they will. That's one thing where I maybe sound a little negative a few weeks ago about X-Men the MCU. I just worry because I love them, but that's one thing that Fox was scared to do, all the kind of space elements in X-Men. The MCU is not going to be scared of that. So as Chris says in the opening lots of times, I'm very, very excited to see Mojo one day.
Yeah, and then Tony had a comment to yours. Without a doubt, Beta Ray. For a while, coworkers said he wanted him to show up as well. No clue anything about Beta Ray, but recently read some of the comics with him and enjoyed seeing him. I mean, he's our deep pull for the Thor universe. So I think we're next to our I can't remember his name, Frog Thor. I can't remember his exact name.
Oh yeah,
someone will correct me. That's one where I just see the image in my head. So. But all right, yeah, we had some. We thought it was going to be a light news week, and then pretty much Friday, Saturday, we kind of found some kind of late news things
Yeah, it
dropping.
was all
So
backloaded. It was crazy. I thought
yeah.
because I thought we might be doing a kind of a topic or whatnot, but then yeah, lead us away. What do you want to start with today?
Yeah, let's start with not necessarily news, but kind of our commentary.
Mm-hmm.
We'll delve into DC. For anyone that had not been paying attention, DC had announced that they are doing a major what they call DC Fandome, and it's going to take place in August, where they're just basically going to line up from movies, comics, everything. They're going 24 hours straight of just content availability. They're not going to put new material out 24 hours straight, but they will be available because this is going to be worldwide. And so, I'm a DC fan, always been like that. Travis, you love your DC as well, but we're kind of wondering what Marvel's response to this will be because, with SDCC, going online, it's going to be my first ever attending SDCC in any way, shape, or form, being that it's free and online.
Mm-hmm.
But should Marvel follow suit and basically not do much at all with SDCC and do their own kind of fandom? Because they have a bunch of stuff they can promote.
Yeah, they do. So yeah, first of all, I gotta say I think that's a very smart move over by DC. Like I said earlier, I'm excited to hear Greg and Tress talk about it. I'm a big DC fan. I just think that's gonna be lots of fun. Obviously, look out. They'll probably say this, but we're gonna do coverage. I think we're gonna be doing most time this network is this day is this day. I think for special occasions, like if Comic-Con did happen in the real sense, like that, I think that Saturday we're probably going to have a bunch of us together, maybe doing some live casts. So look out for more info that we're going to cover that, and it's going to be lots of fun. So congrats to them, and I think that's just a great idea. And I think I as far as me wanting it, of course, I would love a day, kind of, even if it doesn't have to be 24 hours, just a day of events or announcements, a tribute to Marvel. But I don't think we're going to get right now. We got this a few weeks ago, which was funny. It was during the Man of Steel commentary track. Remember, Disney Plus was doing that, like a day of announcements or something. And it really was nothing much. Like the most we learned about it was there was going to be a new Muppet show, and I love the Muppets. But other than that, it was like, here's a clip of Artemis Fowl, and here's that. So that's my worry is like, you look at DC right now, they obviously have the Snyder Cup coming. They have the Batman. They have Wonder Woman. They have Flash in the works. The thing that they kind of have an advantage over Marvel, or at least just a different side of the coin, is lots are like, as of right now, the Batman is not a DCU film. It is just on their own. So they don't really have to worry about, well, if we promote this or doing this, the Batman gets delayed or stuff like that. That's my worry with the MCU, as far as we talked about this a few weeks ago, that their entire phase got shifted, right? So to me, it's just, I feel like they're off timeline, and that's why I wonder if they will. Maybe they'll drop a few things, like maybe they could do a day of Marvel, and maybe it would just be a few trailers and maybe one announcement, like, hey, we've casted Moon Knight and stuff like that. I am hoping for that, but even that, I worry that there's such a machine that they go, you know what, we had a plan. All these announcements were supposed to be after Black Widow, because what happens if there is an end credit scene in Black Widow that was supposed to tease something, right? And they have that person casted, but they can't obviously announce it now. Like, unless you're in the NBA, we haven't seen that movie, right? So that's the thing.
Rumor has it.
So I got to start shooting hoops and work on my threes to get seeing Black Widow. But that's the thing. I think that you could maybe get a Disney Day, something like that, where it'd be everything. Because I think Marvel on its own, there might be lack thereof as far as announcements that they want to put out there. But if you did a D23, like a day of Disney, then you could go, oh, here's a little from Pixar, here's a little from that. I think that's more realistic than getting a DC fandom or a Marvel fandom equivalent. I want it, but we've kind of seen how they work. What are you thinking?
Yeah, you bring up a good point, is that, they kind of put a lot of stuff out there already, and things have shifted. Some of their stuff in comics are now going back into order. You have Empire coming now into fruition. You have Ten of Swords coming out. So there's you're right, it may not be in a way similar to DC. And I say, people say, well, Marvel shouldn't copy DC or DC shouldn't copy Marvel. Let's be honest, guys and ladies and everyone listening out there. It's okay to copy each other, borrow everything. It's been done, since then. I'll point to the South Park episode where it goes, Simpsons did it. I mean, even in TV, it happens, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
In everything, though, sports copy, like teams copies plays, like everybody, writers copy writers. There's so many versions of a script that is like, oh, this was inspired by this and this. That's just like, it's different if they literally just said Marvel fandom and they did the exact. Then it's like, okay, but if they just throw an event, you have no idea that maybe Marvel was planning this. You see this all the time in the gaming world too. So it's like, I'm always fine with comparing and having fun conversations, but the whole like, oh, they're copying one another. It's just both do it, and just kind of the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah, but it would be interesting. But I see your point is that it may not be as, you know, as huge as DC is, just because there is still some announcements that they're holding on to. Snyder Cut's going to be in there with his, more information about
Hmm.
that and everything like that. So it would be cool. I do have to step away for just a quick second. Why don't you continue the conversation?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, no, I'm trying to think what they could. So we've seen Eternals. They could drop that because there's apparently supposed to be a trailer. My other thing is with Black Widow. It's funny that they put out that last trailer, and I kind of thought that it was going to be. They've kind of been doing that, Marvel, right? Where they'll do the teaser and then a trailer, and then they kind of do like their TV spots and whatnot. But they've been kind of reeling it back to do just two trailers. So with Black Widow, that's always interests me as far as I felt like they had a pure plan as far as, okay, this is the marketing strategy, and obviously they had to push it back. So they got to put out another trailer. I imagine the other trailer will be pretty similar to the last one with some new footage. But again, it's like I said, it's kind of that's the thing. They always have a plan. It seems like, right? So them putting out another trailer might be like they don't want to do this. At the end of the day, no one wanted to delay these movies, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I that's what interests me the most. And same thing with Eternals. Eternals now comes out in February, so I could see a trailer, but even then, it's so you got Comic Con at home at July, which people kind of said it's gonna be small. Then you got this in August. That's why I feel that maybe, like I said, a day of Disney, but I could still feel them being like, you know what, no, or maybe it'll be a bit closer to Black Widow to kind of get that hype up. But yeah, I don't think it'll be the same sort of event.
And that's fine. I haven't seen a full schedule for SDCC, so they might have some sort of
Mm-hmm.
presence. But I knew that what SDC did do, the DC didn't have a presence, and this is obviously why. And I think, at the end of July, we're getting the Justice Con focused on
Mm-hmm.
everything to do with Zack Snyder's Justice League and a number of different things. Focusing, also getting some information and panels about the American Federation for Preventing Suicide. I'm probably not saying it right, but which is awesome because that's been a big promotion for him as well, and it's an amazing organization as well. So I'm glad they're getting creative with how they're promoting different things, and I think if anything, that is something that I want Marvel to look at and see, okay, how can we promote in a different way if we don't have the normal means? We're hearing more news that filming is going to start resuming in different ways. Falcon Winter Soldiers looks like supposedly getting a green light to start back up again. So how do we promote this in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of some people have talked about for years, but I do think we need to get used to the idea of Comic Con going back to being smaller because we've seen that with the gaming side as far as E3 is kind of on its way out. I think Comic Con won't be on its way out, but as far as it being the one stop shop, every studio is going to be here. We've seen whether it's just for marketing purposes or budget purposes, people are stepping away. That's the way of the internet now is instead of doing a whole panel and a whole announcement, the whole kind of shala of look at what we're doing, you can literally just hit upload to YouTube and drop a trailer and make, almost the same ruckus. So I think that we've seen that with D23, but I think this is a time for them to experiment. Again, will they take that opportunity? I'm not so sure, but I think you've seen with DC that I don't think this DC fandom, that might not be a one-off as this successful, right? In the future, they may do it once life is hopefully back to normal of people doing like a Comic-Con, cosplaying, panels, stuff like that, because they take out the middleman, it's much like streaming. So I think you'll see a lot of these unfortunately kind of staples that we were, especially in the aughts, as far as Comic-Con and E3, these huge nerd and geek conventions that got everyone together. I think studios and companies now go, we could do that our own and make a lot more money and spend a lot less money. So I think this will be something that, again, kind of like home releases where I think it would have happened more VOD, but with COVID, it's definitely sped up the process.
Yeah, and our buddy Greg definitely. I know we've talked about it on Super Civil Servants a lot. He has very strong feelings about how this can look and do, and I think he's got some very interesting ways and very capable ways of what the future looks like. So, but yeah, so let's move on to some of our news topics that started kind of some late hits at that point. We'll start with Deborah Chow and her meeting with Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
For those that, have been fans of Mandalorian, she has did some amazing work on that show. She's also directed episodes of Jessica Jones and Iron Fist. So she is not a stranger to Marvel. She's not a stranger to directing. She's an awesome director. Everything I've seen her do, it would make sense. But we don't know what that movie is. This does come from MCU Cosmic on June 19th. He put this out there. She's had a meeting. We don't know what it is. We can have our theories about that. I think one of the ones that's been put out there is Captain Marvel 2. Um, but I think that would be a great get for her. I mean, great get for Marvel to have Deborah Chow as part of this universe. I think she's an outstanding director.
Yeah, and obviously, as we always say, these are just rumors, right? These are just not from the Hollywood Reporter, stuff like that. These are kind of always say like I preference with a C tier and whatnot, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still we
Yep.
talk about them. That's what the show's for, right? So we have a little fun here. So with Mandalorian, I'm somebody that I quite enjoy the show. I don't love it as much as everybody else because I feel like the first season was a lot of setup, and I feel like there was a bit more pitfalls. I feel like people kind of brushed to the side. But for me, the strongest episodes was the Taika Waititi one. But even in that, I still would probably put Deborah Chow's both her episodes above his. I was, especially her episode, I think came at a time when I was starting to not necessarily not enjoy the show, but I was getting a little more shaky of like, oh, this is not exactly what I was wanting to be. And then she came in out of nowhere. I think it was episode 3, and it's like, wow. And then when she followed up again, I think it's kind of what we talked about a few weeks ago with Ryan Coogler and Black Panther. I think she's just somebody that Disney wants to keep. One, because I imagine that she's not doing episodes of Mandalorian, but she's doing the full show running of Obi-Wan. That's a lot of confidence right there. Yeah, like obviously that's tons of. Before she was just directing a few episodes, but now she's show running, so she's writing and she's now directing every episode. That's confidence right there, because I don't care. Obviously, there's been so many production problems with that, and you can check this out on Star Wars Alliance with them talking about Star Wars. But for me, Obi-Wan, that's a huge IP, and I think they know that. So I think them giving her that, and I imagine if these rumors are true, that's going well. Obviously, production hasn't started because of COVID stuff, but maybe they are loving her ideas. Obviously, they already love her track record with other things she's directed and Mandalorian. I think it's just good to keep talent, and I think obviously, yeah, Captain Marvel 2 is the go to jump because it's one of the newer ones coming out that we don't have a director for. We lost the previous directors, so it does make sense. If you've followed me on Twitter or followed me on GeekVerse, I've been such a huge fan of and supporter of Deborah Chow ever since then. And look more into her work. I want to see her do one of these. I just think she has exactly what Disney and Marvel look for as far as people that have a strong voice but can also play with a team. That's not everybody, right? And this is not a shot against them, but someone like Edgar Wright was smart to walk away from Ant-Man because he kind of knew that, hey, you know what, I won't work well in the system. I want to do what I'm doing. And there's nothing wrong with both ways, because
No.
Marvel is very upfront. It's not like, obviously there's been some problems with Thor Dark World, stuff like that, but it seems like the past few years they've been more, hey, we have a game plan, come in. I've always said it's like the chef special where they run a restaurant, but they're bringing different chefs to cook something different. They may say, hey, everybody at this restaurant has a mushroom allergy, so don't use mushrooms, but they say whatever else, spice it up as much as you can. You talk to James Gunn, you talk to Ryan Coogler. That's the thing with Marvel. They get lots of crap, and even sometimes I give them that of like, oh, were they toying with stuff? But if you believe him on his word, James Gunn was asked like a few weeks ago about it was Michael Rooker in Guardians 2 when he's kind of in that prostitute brothel scene and said, oh, did you get any pushback? And he said, no, they never said a single word about it. So if you want to believe him on faith, that lots of times they will let you run free. And I think Deborah Chow is someone you want to run free. I think she's very talented, and it doesn't even matter to me what she directs, whether it's Captain Marvel 2. It's just the second if this is real and she was confirmed for any project, I'd be fine if they say, hey, she's doing the next Avengers. Obviously, that's a big task, but Joss Whedon, had only done TV and he took on the Avengers. So I think as long as you have a talented person with the right team, it'll work, and she's a very talented person. So this is one rumor that I really hope is true. I really would like to see what she'd do in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, I think even hearing her speak about her process and the craft with Disney Gallery,
Yeah.
looking at the Mandalorian, I think that's really even more sold me on how even more just her art and what she puts out there speaks for itself. But hearing her and hearing her speak and following her in interviews at that point, it's a lot of confidence at that point. So yeah, so we'll have to wait and see what comes from that. Kind of revisiting a story and kind of a clarification on my part. We got a story. Frank Grillo wants Marvel to make a Crossbones TV show. So last week we got the story that he's kind of questioning whether his trajectory is going in Marvel. Well, there was a caveat to that I've recently, so I'm going to put this is a mea culpa on my part. looking back at the Uproxx article that was based on, he was asked the question if he'd wanted to still portray the Punisher. And so he's been a lot of fan casting for that. And that's where he said, that's not my trajectory. It's not where my life has taken me anymore. And my friend John Bernthal did an amazing job. My life and what I want to do is much different now. And I've kind of, this is where I think I've outgrown the whole kind of Marvel and superhero thing. So that's where people said, okay, it wasn't necessarily promoted as necessarily Punisher too. It was also promoted as he's done with Marvel in general. Well, then, Travis, last night you sent me something very interesting, and some of our fans also said, "Wait a minute, didn't he just say that he was done?" Well, doesn't look like it. Why don't you kind of take that one? What he wants to do, a Crossbones TV show now?
Yeah, it sounds like he was just promoting some stuff, and they were kind of talking to him about like Disney Plus possibilities. And I'm just paraphrasing here because I don't have the quote up, but he just said, "Oh yeah, that's something I would love to explore." He jokingly said that maybe they get an actor half my age to explore that, but I think that's kind of what we talked about last week. Where if he did come back, it would be in that sort of sense where I don't see him what his role is necessarily going in the MCU moving forward, and he is kind of dead. But again, no one ever stays dead in these comic movies. But it shows that he would be open to it. I don't foresee a Crossbones solo series coming. I think people like the character, but I don't think my parents, if I said who's Crossbones, they'd look at me like I asked them to to tell me where Noah's Ark is currently. They'd have no idea what's happening. So I think he could pop up again. I think it's good to hear he is open to it. And again, I don't think there's a role for him, but I'd be happy to see him again down the line, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of interesting, though the question was asked about the Punisher, but he makes that following statement. He's not part of the Marvel superhero kind of thing. Now, yes, Crossbones is a villain. Someone could say, okay, well, he's not totally saying that, but it's kind of like interesting within a week, we get these two different quotes at that
Mm-hmm.
point. So, I mean, as you, kind of said, there wasn't much, the character time on there was not a lot. So you kind of want maybe more fleshed out, but like you're saying, is anyone wanting to see more of Crossbones besides him? Maybe. I'm not necessarily one of them. I thought we could have done more with the character, but he went out in a blaze of glory in Civil War, and so be it.
Yeah.
I mean, I love him. I'm enjoying his character on Billions. I love that show, and I love seeing him get more work because I think, as I agree with him, he wants to do a little bit more with his life, and I like seeing our actors and actresses stretch their muscles beyond where some of us were first introduced to them. So
Yeah, and I think like we talked last week, I think there's room potential for what ifs and stuff like that. There's other media where Marvel can kind of get use of him. So I would guess we'd see him again one day, but nothing too big.
yeah. So all right, we'll have to wait and see. But so yeah, we get a story I know you got very excited about. Also from MCU Cosmic. Marvel is beginning to lay the groundwork for their greatest villain in the MCU. And I'm also excited because it also ties into one of my favorite storylines. So it looks to be they're reporting that they're kind of trying to find a way to bring in Doom, Latveria, everything, kind of what we've been talking about
Mm-hmm.
for the last couple of weeks when we brought up Doom and what we would like to see it.
It keeps coming up. It's
And,
funny. This is 3 weeks
yeah,
now. It's come up from either a listener question or I brought it up. So there's something in the waters in Latveria.
exactly. And it's, with Doom, Doom's just been Doom. And I kind of brought up the point when we talked about, do we want Latveria to be a part of it or do we want to make it like a corporation? It sounds like, and I like it bringing in Latveria actually part of the MCU proper, but they're also going into the idea that it may not be Doom as our introduction to Latveria in that country. It may be Latveria itself, or what they're putting out there is Lucia von Bardas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I get excited when I hear that name because she is the main villain in Secret War, which is a storyline I really would love to see brought into MCU proper in some way, shape, or form. So that gets me excited. On top of also seeing the possibility of Doctor Doom in that way. So, what do you think about this kind of backdoor bringing in, yeah, kind of slyly bringing in Latveria, Doom, this possible prime minister? What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is this is something I ponder all the time. As far as Marvel, I always think about what we do with X-Men and what we do with Doctor Doom. And specifically, I do like Fantastic Four, but Doom's one of my favorite villains. I'm always wondering, because you and I have already talked about this, as far as Doom is a versatile character he's been the villain of the F4, but he's almost been the villain of everybody. He's been Iron Man villain. He's been a Spider-Man one. He's been Black Panther. So it's that thing of, you don't necessarily have to debut him with F4, but now with this, it's tricky because I'm trying to think about where and when and all this is happening, and Doom just poses up so many questions. If these rumors are true, again, rumors, I do like the route of going another country. We've seen that work with Wakanda, and I think it worked very well. This would be kind of the opposite side of maybe an evil country trying to do bad to our heroes. So, and I think the swap as far as introducing her first and not him, because kind of in the past, comics have been more, she's kind of a successor to Doom or kind of takes over. I think with this,
Yep.
we've seen this before where we got Scott Lang instead of Hank Pym. Now, Hank Pym technically, yes, was there before, but in our chronologically, we met Scott Lang. He's our main character. They've done this before. We've talked about this. There's been lots of fun had on Twitter this week with David Ayer and, stuff like that with Jason Todd. But I was talking about that with Nathan. You can change anything as long as there's a writer with a keyboard. It doesn't matter what the case is. As long as they're sitting in front of a computer, they can change everything. When we meet Wolverine, they could make Logan a woman. They could make Logan any skin color. All it takes is just a keyboard, right? So them changing this up is not a big deal, but I feel like this would make sense, as it kind of feels like the Thanos Ronin thing. Would you agree that maybe we meet Ronin and there's some allusions to a Victor Von Doom or a Doctor Doom out there? I don't know what sort of sense, but that's what I was going to hit you with, because you're a fan there. And check out episode 1, because you were pitching this story, like a storyline involving her. So again, kind of, it's funny, it's been kind of in tune with our podcast, but how or where would you debut her first, and what would you make the relation to Doom? Would she already have relations with Doom? Is it hey, we're just meeting that country? What do you have in your mind when you hear this, if this were true?
I like the idea that if she is the quote unquote prime minister, or, Doom's kind of public face
Yeah.
for Latveria at that point, I think that's a good way to kind of get the building towards when we eventually see Victor Von Doom in it. And she is, she posed as someone in Secret War where, Doom was no longer in charge. She was now in charge of Latveria and wanted to do, change people's opinions on Latveria and be kind of like, oh, we're not this country anymore, do this. When behind the scenes, she's working with the Tinkerer and selling these incredibly deadly weapons at that point. So, we can always trust, she can't trust her totally, but I like the idea of what the rumor is going, that possibly maybe being the entry point to bring in, maybe again, she's Doom's right hand man. We don't know. We hear this mysterious ruler, but she is the public face and trying to, make everyone see what they want the world to see Latveria is, and behind the scenes, it's not so much.
So I have a place I want to ask you, because obviously this sounds like this could be maybe a Wakanda situation where we met Claw, and that was some introduction of Wakanda. Where in an upcoming film, whether it's announced or not, would you see the first flavoring of Latveria, or even this character? Do you have any in mind that sprung to mind, like, oh, this is where they could do it?
I don't think we're seeing in the current phase at all.
I could agree with that.
Phase 4, I think, if anything, I have said it before, Black Panther just being, we could see it in a passive mention.
Mm-hmm.
Now that Wakanda is open to the world, Latveria may be in kind of a passive, like a UN sequence, or just, he just had a meeting with the ambassador or the prime minister from Latveria. It's something in passing, I think, there right now, but it's got to be some sort of globe-trotting or global movie that has that impact, and that's where I'll say Black Panther would be a perfect one, since we know that Wakanda now is open to the world, and the truth behind it is out there.
I was gonna say, what happens in that movie if we've talked about before? I've been pitching Doom to be a villain. What if they don't go that route to do more? What if there is a mission kind of like the way he had to go after Claw? What if there is a part in that movie where he has to go to Latveria? Latveria is not the main villain, but that's where we could meet her. We could meet the idea of Latveria.
Yeah,
That was kind of my thinking of as far as a
I like that.
possibility. As far as let's say villain number A, whoever he's after, is there, kind of like a James Bond-esque movie. He goes there, and we get the inklings of what's going on, and even then that could be a perfect end credit scene to introduce her. Even my kind of goal, my wish, is that they introduce, like, I don't think this would ever happen, but I would love them to keep the casting of Doctor Doom secret, and then in a movie him appear and him just be like introducing himself as Victor Von Doom, and then everybody has that kind of Thanos end credits moment, like, oh my god, like that's, or if it is kind of like we were talking about UN, like let's say someone from Latveria is coming to Wakanda and walks off that plane, is a very dashing, good looking man, and he just shakes someone's hand and says, oh, I'm, call me Victor, or something like that, and it's that inkling of we know what's coming. That's where I thought with Black Panther 2. And then the other one I thought was, because again, these are still rumors, so we don't know, but there's been rumors of Captain Marvel 2 possibly being a big crossover, maybe Secret Invasion. I kind of took the sense of the same way we learned about Claw and Wakanda in a big movie as far as Avengers. If there's another big crossover, I think that's when we could get the first taste or look at Latveria.
Yeah, I think those. I mean, again, the sky's the limit. We know Fantastic Four is coming. We
Mm-hmm.
know, what they bring in with that, and you can't go Fantastic Four without Victor Von Doom. So, again, it's trying to get the pieces in line, and also with everything shifting, it gives them more time, which is a good thing in my opinion, to flesh these characters out, flesh this amazing franchise of Fantastic Four that has not been done well at all.
No, no.
outside of the
Mm-hmm.
Incredibles.
It's it's on Disney Plus for your fan for stick. I saw you Americans got it now, so there you go.
Yes, and
Happy
it
Father's
will.
Day.
Yeah, that will not be in my queue for many, many times, and I really will have to be striving for content because I don't see that possible.
No, I want to
um,
ask you one question that's completely also, I'm not going to ask it now because I thought of a fact or fiction. So stay tuned because I have another Doctor Doom related thing next week, but I'll save that. I want to ask you just from a practical sense as far as big time villains. Obviously Loki, no problem there, but Ultron, Thanos, CGI villains, you saw their face moving. What happens, like I said, this is a very minor question, but I just thought about this last night with Doom. What do they do there? Do they do a Spider-Man-esque sort of thing where they go, oh, because of his mask is like technology-based, his face can move? Or is it just literally a metal plate? Obviously, you have his eyes, but I was just thinking about that last night. Like, what do they do in that situation?
yeah, that is a good point.
All the other movies, it's just been the mask and an actor doing VOD, right? And
Mhm.
it's tough because those movies aren't great, so you can't say it didn't work. Because I see something like V for Vendetta where that worked out great, but then, like I said, those Fantastic Four movies not the greatest. So it's a
Well,
minor thing, but I just thought about it like late last night. Like, what are they gonna do about his face?
it's one of those things that I mean, I think that they can still do the stoic mask at that point. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what makes Doom, sounds stupid, makes Doom Doom. It is that mask, and I've at first, if they were able to find a way to kind of make it CG and make it move, it'd be, oh, okay, it'd take me a minute to kind of get used to
Yeah.
that since I've never kind of seen it outside of animation for that to happen. Um, I kind of like the stoic mask just because it's just that mask, that presence, it inspires fear, and and just fear leads to the respect for fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm very interested. I agree with you there that I don't know which route they could go. I think that I think they'll find a way to do the CGI mask, but then again, maybe they'll do a bit more of the actor. I know the look is iconic, but maybe they'll have a bit more of the actor's face in there. Or do they do potentially the Iron Man route where it's the face is the plate, but we get like inside the mask? I could see them also
and
doing
that,
that.
yeah, I think I don't necessarily think that way because with Tony was more of just like looking at what he's seeing through the world in
Yeah.
the sense of like like Jarvis or whoever Friday was, how he was interacting with what was going on at that point. Doom could have that kind of technology integrated with this. That would be also that where I see it, but it also will depend on how Victor Von Doom's tragic accident happens, where they're going to take from,
Yeah,
in that idea.
I could see it being more Iron Man-esque because obviously they do that a lot with the MCU. You have Spider-Man's suit that's like that, so I could see them taking that route. And obviously, a few years ago, he was an Iron Man villain again, prominently, and he was building like an Iron Man Doom version suit, right, where it was all green and silver and stuff like that. So, if I had to guess, I think they may go that route of making it more of a kind of Ironmonger sort of big. He may have an accent still, but he will still have suit-based things. Maybe that's what with Tony Stark gone, he's trying to corner the market as the new person to make this type of gear, but he's not like Tony anymore, where he is like, oh, I won't sell to the bad guys. Maybe Victor's kind of like, I'll sell to whoever, as long as you buy my stuff and make me rich and keep Latveria going. So
Yeah. So okay, well, we'll just have to, as everything with these rumors coming from our the blog community at that point. Rumors, they have their sources, but their sources are not necessarily ones that, why they're rumors.
Yeah.
We don't, we it's not like we said a Hollywood Reporter or anything like that, but we'll wait and see. Hey, gives us some good discussion, right? And hopes and dreams.
Oh yeah, I hope and dream about Doctor Doom every day. So yeah, exactly.
Makes us have other conversations about that. We'll talk about that later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Our last one kind of is a revisiting of an older story, not from us, but something that it kind of crept back into from IGN. They had a conversation with a screenwriter, I believe his name, David Coep or Cope, not sure.
Is he the guy that wrote the Indiana Jones movies and stuff like that?
Yep, he
David Kemp is his name. David Kemp.
David Kemp. Yeah. Yep. He was also at one point, he did do Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but also he was attached to, as many people have been, at Indiana Jones 5, Jurassic Park. He's got a lot of, pluses and minuses. I think Mission Impossible he was a part of. So, I mean, he's got a lot of street cred, but at one point he is the screenwriter of the original Spider-Man Tobey Maguire movie. And IGN had spoken with him and brought up the idea of that, and I totally had forgotten about this, that James Cameron at one point wrote a treatment or a screen treatment for Spider-Man, and they asked him, what impact did that have on his writing of it. He said, I never saw any previous versions from development because it just come out of litigation. And he explained over the Zoom call that, and if so, there were other versions like canon in the 80s, 90s, but Cameron's treatment was very influential. And he said, I had a lot of my own specific thoughts on what the movie ought to be, but I had been a Spider-Man fan since I was a kid and adult. And he said, but with Cameron's treatment, took it very seriously, took Peter very seriously, took superhero movie genre very seriously, like nothing had ever been done before, because this was before X-Men. It had not come out yet. And he said one of the biggest interesting things that he took from Cameron was that it was an 85-page treatment, but he took the organic web shooters that Cameron originally had and put that into his own script, which it was controversial when Cameron wrote it. It was definitely controversial when it was in the Tobey Maguire universe. And so, you had pointed out, and so IGN also linked to their review. Cameron's script is out there.
Yeah. Or most of it, it's like a script treatment or somewhere. I think the majority, there's some stuff missing, but the big beats are all out there.
The big beats are there. For those of you who, maybe, Travis, maybe you can put some links to some of this stuff so that we can get our listeners to maybe who have never heard about this, maybe kind of link out to some of this stuff. I know IGN did a review of the script and maybe point them in that direction, but they kind of go into, it's supposed to be rated R. Yeah. Rated R Spider-Man movie. So, I mean, James Cameron does rated R movies. Spider-Man was eyeing Leonardo DiCaprio. So this was pre-Titanic. I think who did we have for Aunt May?
Aunt May was Maggie Smith. So
Smith.
What's her name? Who does she play in Harry Potter? That's her biggest role. McGonagall. That's like one of, and she's in Downton Abbey. Obviously, she's been an actress in many things, but I'm just trying to name some that people are a bit more familiar with the past few years. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that would be a great casting at that point.
Phenomenal, yeah.
And this is where we start getting into some interesting stuff with the villains. We have a villain named Carlton Strand. Now, who the heck is Carlton Strand? I don't know him at that point. Well, no, this is who Electro is supposed to be. Carlton Strand, there he has the powers of Electro, and we're taking Electro and Kingpin, and he is trying to basically be the Kingpin of New York with through his powers, and his goal is to get Spider-Man to be a part of his super powered mob at that point. And then we have we have Sandman in this, but he's not called Sandman. I think it was called Boyd.
Boyd, yeah.
Yeah, Boyd in this treatment. I didn't recognize the name of who they cast as Mary Jane.
No, she was somebody that I think was just bigger around the time, but it was clearly just because she was a redhead. So and not even bigger, just more kind of up and coming. But I think it was just purely because of the hair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The rated R apparently at one point in the script out there, Peter says, "I'm gonna kill you, mother effer. You hear me? You're dead. You sick, sick." So that would be different.
Yep.
Supposedly there was Peter as Spider-Man supposedly having sex with Mary Jane on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. So that would have been interesting. I think he also made Peter Parker come from Maryland instead of Queens.
Well, and then the other lead you buried too was setting up for a sequel. He was planning on having Arnold Schwarzenegger play Doc Ock.
Oh, well, I wasn't bearing the lead. Okay. I was getting. I wasn't
sure. I wasn't sure. No, yeah, just because
there's just a lot to sort through on this one. But yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a role in this, being Otto Octavius, and so
just Otto though. No villainy right now as far as that movie. Yeah.
Which he played Victor. He would later play Victor Freeze. Got Otto Octavius. We're typecasting in the sense of, okay, we're going to do German roles for the Austrian.
Yeah. Well, and also the scientist thing, because I know some people have kind of like, why do people always cast him in these roles? The man ran for what was governor and won. It was for governor many years. I think that's because the people that work with him, there's obviously, of course, you got and the chopper, but like he's clearly a very smart guy. So I think that's why he's always been put in some of these roles where people go, oh, I don't see it. He has this, he's so like, he's buff and he has this accent. But that's why always in movies sometimes when people go, oh, they have this like really hot, huge buff guy playing the scientist, it can work. There's people out there, and yes, he did win because obviously he has some popularity. So of course that helps, but you also have to be well spoken. You have to be, so it's like that's why he's always, I think, kind of gotten some of those roles, is because, or been talked about when you think, oh, why is he playing a scientist? It's probably because in real life when people are talking to him, he comes off as quite an intelligent guy. So, but that would have been, I would love to have seen that.
People probably wouldn't see it as much.
I agree. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, there's some of the stuff like his discovery of his powers based around kind of puberty-esque. We'll kind of leave it at that. I don't want to get into those details.
Spider-Verse did it better. We'll just go that route.
Yeah, Spider-Verse did it way better at that point. It touches on questions on what a real teen would do with spider power. So that's why, Co-op kind of talks about taking it seriously. It was a little, obviously, being a rated R, it had some wit, but also a lot of darker elements within there as well. It's kind of runs the gamut of Fox not putting X-Men in costumes, or people being fearful of costumes, in the sense of, why can't we call them Sandman, Electro? Why do we have to create other names?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting kind of take. It would have been very interesting to see it actually come to fruition, since it was just not a fully fleshed out. So I don't want to look like I'm crapping all over what Cameron did, since it wasn't a full script out there at that point. But it does give us the hints of what later Sam Raimi and Co-op would do with their next one. It does give little blueprints here or there.
Yeah, and it's so funny, right? It's kind of like a ripple effect. I feel if this movie come out, comic book films would have been very different, because It might be a controversial thing. I still think Sam Raimi's 2002 Spider-Man is the best live-action Spider-Man. Not Spider-Man 2. I think the first one is, and I think it's also up there with Batman Begins as the best origin. And I think what it did is there's definitely some cheesiness in there. There's definitely some stuff that's dated, but I thought one captured the aura of Peter Parker. That's a different type of name altogether. Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but also had that kind of whimsical for children, family sort of deal. And I think with a character like Spider-Man, you can have some versions like this James Cameron version where you could do that, but you don't want to lead off with that, and that's where this would have, I think things would have changed entirely, and you could see comic books go in a different direction, and a direction I think would not have been good, because in the early 90s and 2000s, that was the time. Hollywood's always been about IP. So I love that so many people I see all the time tweeting out and talking about like, oh, there's no original film. Hollywood's always been obsessed with trying to just get what can make the most money. And there's tons of original films out there. You just got to go look for them. It's like we joked tons about in our GeekVerse or the Geek Ultimate Alliance chat about The Lighthouse, but that's a very, very original film that not many people have seen, but then you'll get that same person go, oh, there's not enough original film. It's out there. You just have to find it. But this is a case in the 90s and 2000s where comic book films were not being embraced. They were being made, and they want because, hey, this is an audience that we could hopefully get money out of and expand. Like James Cameron's quote at one point saying this could have been a $2 billion franchise. And I honestly believe him. I don't even think, because audience would have known any better, this could have been big. James Cameron at that time was huge. He's still massive, but he had just done the two Terminator movies, True Lies, and obviously what happened before, but then went on to do Titanic. James Cameron is the type of guy that if he wanted to do something, he was going to do it. So in the 90s, 2000s, like you're talking about, that's always the time where let's change outfits, let's change the character's name. Even as far as Iron Man 2, where you have a combination of Red Dynamo and what is it? Or I think it's Whiplash, and is it Red Dynamo or Red Crimson is the Russian villain in Iron Man. I'm mixing up his name, but
you got me on that
yeah,
one.
so it's they took two characters and meshed them together, and that's something that honestly still kind of happens sometimes, but it's done with a bit more love nowadays. This was, hey, we have this, but this is a bit too comic booky. Like you said with the suits, that's a bit too comic booky. How can we change it up? So it's just kind of a sign of the times, but to me, it's what I'd want to see is, because this to me is very similar to, let's say if Christopher Nolan came to Marvel right now and said, I want to do this type of film, very likely they're going to let him just based off his name. They would maybe even let him do the first ever Marvel Elseworlds just because that's the name he had. And that's what James Cameron has. It's funny his relationship now with superhero films, where he kind of trashes them and kind of does the same thing. People go, oh, there's so many and they're taking up room in the box office. Just like, well, that's what people want to see. Don't get mad at the people making this. Get mad at the people seeing it, but they never do. So my thing of what I'd want with this, what I'd want with the Death of Superman Returns as far as Nick Cage, and what I want one day, I know we're getting the Snyder Cut, but if you look at Zack Snyder's original vision, even this Snyder Cut is not going to be his original vision. It's going to be what he was working on with Warner Brothers, but then he had to step away from a tragedy. I hope in the future we get more either animated movies or graphic novels continuing a franchise, continuing a universe. There's panels out there of a Tim Burton Two-Face comic book with Billy D. Williams, and I would love that. I don't know why they haven't touched it in this more. We just saw this recently with DC. They went back in the Batman animated series and they added Deathstroke through comic book form. And that's what I'd like is, no, I don't want to see Jim Cameron come back and do this film right now. But if you were to say, hey, we're making a graphic novel based on this movie, which I think some of the stuff is wild. That sex scene is strange if you read the script, because it's based on Peter looked into spiders on how they mate, and that's why he's doing it. It's a scene that wouldn't play. So maybe you would change some things and adapt some things, but at the end of the day, if you put out a graphic novel about this, I think it would, one, sell, and two, wouldn't hurt anything, because we'd get to see that version. It's not going to change MCU. It's not going to make Kevin Feige have to do anything. It would just be off the side. So I would love to do that. The actual movie, yeah, like you said, it's wild, but you can't judge it. It's the same people that say the Duel of the Fates script was so much better than Rise of Skywalker. I like some things in that script more, but until it's on screen, you don't really know what happened. You don't even know that sex scene too could have been cut the day of. There's so many stories in Hollywood where they're filming something and either they add something spur of the moment, and they go, this just isn't working. Even the MCU, look at how much stuff has been taken away and added because of just, hey, this isn't really working. Let's take this out. So this maybe would not have been the finished movie, but I think this movie is interesting. It's kind of screams that 2090s of, we have a comic book, but we're a little ashamed of it. And I would love to see it, like I said, kind of graphic novel or animated form one day.
Yeah, no, and I think, like you said, you can only read into so much of the stuff. I think one of the other things that kind of piqued me, just saying, really, we're going to do that and convolute the story even more. Like, it was a infected fly
Yeah.
that a spider ate. That thing's like, what's wrong with just doing the spider? Why are we adding a middleman into this? It's just, it. I think I always like when these stories come out, because it's always interesting to see like what they had to do, and get read over some of the stuff, listeners. It's definitely interesting, and would love to hear your take on what you would think about it, or what could have been.
It's
So
definitely worth the read. And also, too, in the comments below, hit us with any other Marvel. And that's one, I think one podcast maybe we'll do one time if we don't have too much news. I'd love to take a look at all the kind of films that never happened, films that like Ben Affleck's Daredevil 2, where they were going to do Born Again. It was based off, they were going to use, I can't remember the villain they're going to use. It's the guy, he's kind of like a Scarecrow ripoff. I think his name is Fear something, or just Fear.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were going to do that. So I'd love to one day, we'll maybe do like a you pick 3 and I pick 3 of films that we were maybe don't have to see, but we're the most interested in, because there's just so many films that were in development hell and they've never seen the light of day. And that's what I want. Same thing one of the, I think about Doctor Doom and X-Men the MCU. Another thing I always think about is, man, I hope that Ben Affleck Batman script leaks one day. I just, because they never hurt. It's just to read, to see a what if sort of deal. And also I have to, so I can let the listeners know, it was Crimson Dynamo was the guy that Whiplash was kind of mixed with in Iron Man 2, Anton Vanko. So there you go. And I was referring that because that's what they did with Electro and Kingpin, right? What do we do? Let's just put them together. And you got just some weird mob guy. And even then, it's not much better than the Amazing Spider-Man 2 script, but he got just because of a lightning storm. So he was struck by lightning and he got powers. I actually prefer that over the electric eels we got in Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, so yeah, let us know if there's any movies you really want to see that never got made. Let us know, because it's always fun reading those, right? It's always the what ifs and seeing what could happen, because that could have changed Hollywood or the superhero films in general. So
Yep, exactly. So yeah, look for that link below for the IGN's review of the script. At that point, it's quite entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, so that's kind of the news right now. You want to head to some fact or fiction?
Yes. And do you want, because it's your turn this week, we read out the poll results. Do you want to read Tony's fact or fiction first? Because yeah, as always, you can send in questions, or you can send in your own facts or fictions, because we love hearing the different point of views from you guys and what you guys may be thinking. So it's Chris's turn today, but hit me with his first and then we'll get into yours. And I'm excited.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Tony, for taking us up on that. So this is your fact or fiction. One of the live action Spider-Man we have seen will make an appearance in the upcoming Spider-Verse sequel. So let me read that one more time. One of the live-action Spider-Man we have seen will make an appearance in the upcoming Spider-Verse sequel. So we're talking about any kind of live-action Spider-Man that we have seen, movies, and whatnot. I say fact, because if anything I saw from this movie, I mean, that opening sequence is nothing but a tongue-in-cheek kind of pointing out and laughing at, some of the infamous sequences from the Tobey Maguire universe, especially as I think you GIF tweeted at, or you put out there, using the him rocking and rolling outside
the
of
Spider-Man 3 dance where he's doing the
Spider-Man
arms.
3
Yeah.
dance. So I say that is hugely fact. I can't wait, because that's what I loved about the movie, the Easter eggs in this movie. So I think that is prime for either Garfield, Tobey Maguire, any of them.
Yeah.
Heck, bring in some of the old TV show ones. Bring them
Oh
in,
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a full-on fact, because also if you listen to, I think it was either the directors or Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they tried to get Toby at least in the first one, and Sony apparently said a little too much too fast. I also sometimes wonder if Sony just didn't know this film was going to be a big hit, so they're like, I don't know if we want to do that, but I think this is a foregone conclusion. I've always made the joke at GeekVerse. I say, who's going to get to Toby first? Is it the MCU with the multiverse, or is it the Spider-Verse people? And I think they will get there. I think the same way they did a Miguel O'Hara end credit scene with him going back and he sees
gosh.
I think you could get that, where I don't think they would play a massive role, because I think they kind of wanted create their own Spider-Man or
Oh yeah.
Spider-People, but I think you could get a cameo in the movie or end credit, and I think it could literally be Miles popping up with all of them. I think that would be the scene. It always bummed me out that something fell apart, but there was years ago this rumor that when James Bond was having its 50th anniversary, the Oscars were working on trying to have every James Bond on stage to present an award. And I just thought, man, that would just be such a moment. As far as you don't even have to do anything, you just have to put all 6 and 7 of those men on the stage together and you go, wow, look at that. And that to me would be a moment of, you have people that grew up with Tobey Spider-Man like myself. You have people that grew up with amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, like my sister. My daughter's going to grow up with Tom Holland. So it's just like, if you would have that moment that even when my daughters are older, look back and be like, these are all the generations of Spider-Man, even in animated form, it would be fantastic. And I think if there's only one, I think it's Toby. Andrew, I think you could get back. I think it just, I'm always a little worried about him because it sounded like he got pretty bummed out about the whole buyout. And also just, if you listen, there's a great interview he did with Amy Adams during award season. He just talked about how the films just get so meddled with because they're trying to make it for China and for this demographic, this, that. And it felt like it really, from a guy who showed up at Comic-Con dressed as Spider-Man hiding as a fan, it did sound like the movie and that working on those kind of, not hurt his fandom, but definitely hurt him a little bit, right? So maybe with a break now, he'd be fun to return. It's only for a voice, but sometimes that does sour people, right? Sometimes they go, you know what, I just don't want anything to do with it. So I think Toby's the most likely, but I think there's a scenario where you get a Miles scene with Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Toby, and it would just be, I would be on the edge of my seat. And I do think it's going to happen. What form, I don't know, but I think Spider-Verse 2, it's in the cards for sure.
No, I agree. So we'll definitely put that out there to the other listeners to see what their take is as well. But yeah, I mean, next to, Peter Parker's Peter Parker, but my always two quote unquote alternative Spider-Man is Ben Reilly, and then Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara. Oh my gosh, that costume, that so character. I can't wait to see more of him and voiced by a man that's, we would love to see more of. Our Poe Dameron is voicing him. So
he's like other animated things where it's just like, just make that actual movie. And I know he's older, but just give him that suit. Again, we've talked about this before, but 2099, I don't know why this is a Spider-Man movie. They're not making live action. It's so distinctly different from Spider-Man. I feel you'd get none of those mainstream people going like, where's Tom Holland? They'd be like, oh, this is a Spider-Man in the future. I get it. Boom, you're off to the races,
No joke. To talk about Spider-Man, I am seeing a spider come down from his web onto the table I'm at podcasting. So, you can't plan this any better than that.
Hopefully it bites you and you become a professional wrestler and you're off to the races.
Yeah, but I worry about the after effects. It bites me and kills me at that point.
Yeah, that's not good. That's the terrible what if Disney Plus show. What happened to Tom Holland when he got bit? No, he just died this time. Nothing happened.
that was a great episode.
Yeah, we saved the budget on this one. It was just it was really depressing. It was just Aunt May burying him. He never met Tony and stuff. Yeah, so you got 3 this week, so I'm excited.
Yes,
so what are you going to lead off with?
All right, my first one is the first MCU X-Men movie villain will not be Magneto, but someone who has not yet made an on-screen appearance.
Oh, this gets my mouth watering because I love Magneto. He is my favorite Marvel villain, but the thing of like X-Men quietly, everyone talks about Batman and Spider-Man as having the greatest rogue galleries. X-Men, if you look at them, they have some heavy hitters, whether obviously these are ones that have been on screen, but Apocalypse, anyone from Weapon X, Magneto, we talked about a few weeks ago, Mr. Sinister. One of my personal favorites that I'm dying to see on screen and not in the way that Deadpool 2 did him was Omega Red. I'm a huge fan of Omega Red. I think just with that CGI and everything you do, but I will say fact because I think we talked about this maybe in a future episode that you'll hear, is I think Mr. Sinister is primed to be a perfect X-Men kind of right off the bat villain. And you don't even have to set up Apocalypse. It can be there, kind of like Ronan, but you don't even have to have that connection with Thanos talking to Ronan and credits. You can just, it's Mr. Sinister. You don't kill him off. You leave that. So if you want to do Apocalypse one day, you can. But I think you and I have kind of put forward that we feel Jean or Scott could be the main character of X-Men. I think if Scott, even if it's a sequel, is one of the main, if the two-hander as far as both of them being the leads, I think Mr. Sinister is a perfect way to make him a big threat, but also a personal threat to Scott Summers. So that's my personal pick, but I'll say fiction. I do think it's so here. Okay, here can I ask you this: would it count if Magneto is with the team, but he's just an X-Men and maybe becoming a villain later on? Would he still count as being on screen, or if he's good guy with the team is that.
Well, well, like I said, the main unless because that was kind of like a first class kind of thing
Yeah,
too.
and I just
So
wonder
yeah,
because
so he can be on screen, but he can't be quote unquote the main baddie
okay,
of the first
yeah,
one. So yes, that's
yeah,
allowed.
I would say fact then, because I also think we were going to do an episode on this one day, but I do think there's a possible House of X route where Magneto's kind of with the X-Men, and you can never trust them. I don't know if there's a history there. Again, we'll talk about that, but I will say fact for the first time, whether Magneto's on the team or they pull Wolverine where they're kind of holding him off because Magneto's a big villain. That the second if you watch X-Men, and we love it, hopefully, and then there's an end credit scene of just a piece of metal moving, and it's like a coin, and it goes in a guy's hand, the entire crowd goes nuts because oh, Magneto's coming, so you could build up to Magneto. I don't think you need the same build up as Thanos, but I think you can still wait, or he can even be the end of a trilogy villain. So I will say fact, it'll be a different villain than a previous on-screen one. What about yourself?
Yeah, no, I'm hoping for I call this as a fact at that point, just to kind of change things up a little bit. I agree with you. Magneto can be a part of it. However, Eric is not going to be the main villain. I like to see a changeover and growth to become that kind of like First Class did it in a very well in a very I think they did it very well at that
Yeah.
point. So that's kind of where my question kind of stemmed from. Will the MCU take a cue from First Class? So my second one is excuse me. Whenever a new Avengers movie comes out, because we haven't heard of a new Avengers movie proper, but whenever it comes out, because it's a when, is half the team will be made up of heroes we have not yet seen have an MCU appearance yet.
Okay.
Whether it be so you will have a team that we have seen either in solo movies or have been in those movies themselves, but the other half of the team, we will be the first time seeing those characters on the big screen.
So it's tough. So I'm just gonna go for this with a question and say, let's say it's
Mm-hmm.
6 members. Let's go like original Avenger style, right? So that
Okay.
means 3 and 3. It's tough because again, it's kind of what we talk about Spider-Man. I always wonder with Spider-Man if he has a deal or not, because if he does, I think he's a member. So that's kind of one down. I think Black Panther will leave the throne and give it to someone else and become a member of the Avengers and kind of say, hey, I can do good in Wakanda, but the entire world needs me now. I think Captain Marvel is always back and forth because she's usually very powerful, but that's also a very popular character and a billion-dollar person.
She takes the Batman point of view. I'm a part-time
Well,
member.
yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna go fiction. I think I could see 2 out of the 4 being new, but I think there's still. I don't. Now I'm talking myself out of it because I think about the people that are.
That's why I liked it. It's a tough question to go one way or another, just because I can see both fact and fiction.
Yeah,
But I liked the idea of it. It's just like you said, you could do a 6 or you can make it 8 and kind of see it out there. The way came about it in my mind was like, in like talk about X-Men again at that point, you could always what they always did well perhaps is that you get to introduce some of these new people with powers or new heroes are coming into being, and you don't have to do a huge origin you know scene in there per se. It's like, oh yeah, I did this and this, and that's how I became what I am at that point. Then if the character takes off, yeah, you could do a movie about that. We've Miss Marvel, I know they're trying to get Miss Marvel into Disney Plus at that point. That's also, or they could just say, what, we're going to hold off. We're going to do that after we introduce her in an Avengers movie.
well, and it's difficult because what. So yeah, that's me. If they had a Disney Plus show, you would count that as somebody that's been introduced, right?
Correct. Yes, I would count that.
So then I'll say fiction. I think you could get a few members like a Wanda, like Quicksilver, like Vision, like they did Avengers Age of Ultron 2, but they haven't. It's tough because Infinity War and Endgame was kind of like an end point, right? So we didn't get time for that. And even though sure we saw him in Thor, Hawkeye's introduction was in Avengers. It was a nice cameo in Thor, but you learn nothing about him. That was his real introduction. So I kind of count him as a new person. But I think it's tough because we don't know the numbers. But I think I will say fiction for now. Whether I think every time the numbers go up, like if it's 8 people, stuff like that, then there's more room to play because more current or more like characters we know and then more characters that are new, that's fine. But if it is like a 6 or 5, I feel like they'll rely more on people we've had, even if it's like someone like Sam as Captain America, where he's just on shows now, but he's still been a member. He's still Captain America, hopefully now. So I'll say fiction. That's what I'll go with.
Yeah, no, again, it's one of those that you can see either way, and like you're right, it depends on the expansion of how big the team is, but I'm I'm one of those that I'm gonna go fact
Okay.
just because I'd like to see them do something a little different instead of doing okay, we're gonna have something introduce these characters before they come together. And I think that to challenge them a little bit more, I think you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to. We can treat the audience with, hey, you're gonna see a few people on screen that you've never seen before. I could have done the cop out route with the question and just go, you'll see some, but I at least wanted to just put half on there just to kind of make it interesting. Because, like you said, if you said some, well, what is some?
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. Yeah.
then, so I just kind of put it on there. I'll be interested to see, what the listeners say. So my last one is we will not see a successor to Iron Man until at least phase 6, and it will not be Tony Stark. So again, we will not see a successor to Iron Man until at least phase 6, and it will not be Tony Stark.
So this is tough because we've heard rumors about them possibly doing Ironheart, but all those rumors are kind of like what we covered today, where they've been, bloggers, people that have been sourced, but also get stuff wrong. So it's not a kind of like I said, the A-list tier. I'm gonna say fact. Unfortunately, I think that I like Riri Williams a lot, and I am down for if it is more near the phase 6. I am fine with her being in there. I just don't like that we've already heard rumors as far as if these rumors were true, as far as her possibly coming in, and he just passed away. He just died. We just lost him, and I feel like the layer of him being lost, if we lost him now, and then let's say one of the first projects of phase 5 is, and we have the Disney Plus series Ironheart, or the TV show. I feel right away it's like it does. You have to be careful with, not even myself, with the hardcore kind of fans, with just even mainstream people. You don't want to feel like you're just replacing somebody and getting a lesser than version. I'm not meaning the character. I'm talking more in the sense of a Robert Downey. Robert Downey is very hard to replace, very much like Hugh Jackman as Iron Man, or Hugh Jackman as Iron Man, which almost happened, by the way. He was one of their choices. Look that up. But Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, it's very tough. The difference is with Hugh Jackman, you kind of go, okay, they're doing a completely new version. I can buy. That's like James Bond. That's fine. But with Iron Man, you don't want people going, I like this, but it's not greater than or not equal to Robert Downey's Iron Man. And then people kind of turn away. They kind of push it away, right? That's why I think with Miles, they've done it the right way as far as the comic books, even the video game coming up, where it's a mixture of he's with Peter and maybe Peter eventually passes away. I wish that Riri, if she's coming in the next few years, was already introduced and we had somewhat relationship, but I felt like they kind of adopted that for Peter. So I think fact will happen, but if you ask me my personal taste, I want that character to come up, but I don't want it. It's tough because I don't want it in phase 4 for sure, and I don't want phase 5. I think phase 6 is the perfect time. Phase 4 is kind of the mourning period of Iron Man. What's next? Phase 5 is this is the new and now. This is the next big thing. And then phase 6 could be the absolute new future. And that's what I think. I think we need a phase or two before a Iron Man like character. So I'll say fact for now, but I would not want that to be fact.
Yeah, no, I'm saying fact for now. Like I said, it's at least phase 6. So it could be, it's not phase 6 we introduce whoever is taking over the armor at that point. Um, but yeah, no, I think as you said before, Tony's death has to matter, and the impact of it, we already felt it in Homecoming. I think we're going to continue seeing the impact of Tony's death continuing on, and to have him come back as, come back reanimated, how have you, and take back on this thing kind of makes that, what's the point?
Yeah.
And so I'm fine, just like they say, and bringing it back to Spider-Verse, anyone can wear the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can wear. Yes, Tony Stark is Iron Man, but it doesn't mean that we can't have a different person put on the armor and do that. I mean, we have Rhodey. So
yeah, true.
So, but all right. So our final one today is, as we're going to our comic book club, Civil War issue 2.
Mm-hmm.
What did you feel about revisiting number 2 after the the huge earth-shattering kind of issue that they left us with number one.
Yeah, so I like this one quite a bit. I think this one I maybe sometimes mix up with one because this one feels a bit more not exposition, but this one last week was the setup, but this is really okay setting the stage for the rest of the series. Last week was event happens, we need to figure out what we're going to do, the law happens, and all communications break down. I think this issue is about escalation, and it's about to show, okay, we thought Cap was alone, no, his team is growing. Okay, what is Shield doing? They're wrapping together all the superheroes that aren't forming. No, now they're shooting at them, and now they're beating them up and throwing bombs at them. So I think that's what most of this was kind of like setting the table, showing everybody what side they're on, like for sure this time, and seeing a little doubt with some characters, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But specifically between the Richards, as far as not everybody, even if you're married, sees this issue as the same as one another. So I think it was about escalation, and obviously we'll talk about it as well. But one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most iconic scenes or panels in comic book history was Spider-Man unmasking, because I remember reading this, and that was everyone was already interested, like we talked about last week, as far as just the base of Iron Man and Captain America fighting, heroes fighting, and like the plot was cool too. Once this happened, that took it to another level. Honestly, I kind of, like I said, I always think this is, it's probably because when I read it, I was younger, so I always have like a foggy memory of it. I always thought the Spider-Man reveal was a little bit later on. I always am caught off guard when I read it. I go, right, it's the end of issue 2. And maybe because it's at the end, it kind of bleeds over to 3. But a huge scene because he was one of the last characters that was not known. That was not, his identity was not out there. We always had that with Spider-Man comics, and we could always go back to that. Well, no one knows who Peter was, and that obviously created a dramatic shift for Peter Parker. And the story that follows, which I'm excited to get in the issues, is very well done. So I think this is a good issue about escalation, and also just escalation to the fullest point, as far as you got maybe the ultimate hero that doesn't talk about his identity to people, revealing his identity.
Yeah, there are some definitely favorite scenes, and that's one of them is that iconic moment where he's in front of the world and revealing himself to it. A couple of lines I liked in the beginning is how Maria Hill and her crew are finding like 15 Sergeant, 15 super criminals inside 72 hours Captain America has taken down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he's not working alone. He's proven a point to say that, see, I don't need you to tell me who the bad guys are. I'll still do what's right, but I'm not on board with this registration. You know, like you said, the Richard kind of, Reed being Reed, and so tied up in how amazing this idea is,
Yeah.
and what will become the new prison for the people that will not register and the villains, and can't even notice that his wife is having very huge difficulties with what's going on. But I did like one of the scenes, like even Tony, at that moment, that panel back at the dark penthouse, just going, please tell me I'm doing the right thing
Yeah.
when the legislation comes out, because I like seeing that struggle, that he's not sure. He feels he's right, but I like it builds more to his character that he is not. So many people build up, like, I'm on Tony's side, I'm on Cap's side. I've always leaned a little in Tony's camp, in the sense of, like, he puts out this idea, but seeing these behind the scenes, what the public doesn't see, is like he wrestles with this. He sees the potential of this, but he also realizes there are major downfalls, and we see those repercussions when, Patriot is going to be captured at that point. These are kids out there, and then they end up getting rescued by the quote unquote resistance. Cap's team. But like you said, I think the issue is huge in the sense of, okay, the event in Stanford has happened. Legislation is going to be passed. Captain America has chosen his side at that point. We see the side that we're seeing the effects of how this is starting to play at that point. And then you thought, the ending of Captain America not being on the government side was a huge way to end that issue. Spider-Man revealing himself to the world. That's I almost want to say that kind of is bigger.
I think so, right? Because I think the Cap one was the Cap one it caught you off guard when you first read, as far as, oh, this is a guy going against government. He usually never does that. But it could be, you could see Captain America possibly be putting in some situation where, you know what, he has no other choice in his mind that he has to take this route. Where Spider-Man's identity, I don't think it was like, it could be revealed, but him willingly doing it in a press conference with thousands of photographers and reporters around, not going to happen. If you were to pitch me which one would happen, and the fact that they both happen is big, but the Spider-Man one is definitely bigger, and I think that's the biggest thing why Civil War has kind of withstood the test of time, is because it's a crossover that was meaningful and had events, and it didn't just do the crossovers are very dangerous as far as anything, but it just, even in comic books, as far as, oh, this big event's gonna happen, it's gonna change comic books forever. There's been so many times where we have read crossovers where they either take things back in a few months or they don't deliver, and it's just a lot of marketing, right? It's a lot, we got to get these sales, but well, no, it's true, this did, but for the time, and as far as this thing, where I meant more like, you could have him reveal his identity, and then the next issue they would write it off and go, okay, I'm talking about like just Civil War is like its own isolated thing, right? Like, I know there's other stuff that happened, but I kind of write that off and I go, not that this is my canon, but in this story, this is the canon. And I think that's what did withstand the test time. It's in the arc and in the crossover, they didn't betray themselves. But there's many times where, oh, there's this big plot twist, nah, this character's still alive. Oh, this big plot twist, no, that's not really it. We had to go back and retcon it because, we want to make this issue going further and whatnot. So I think it is, I agree with you, obviously everything in comics, nothing really stands. Spider-Man's identity doesn't change. Batman didn't die. There's
one more day is just an abomination.
Yeah,
there, I said it.
Yeah, you're
there. I said it.
You're not wrong. I didn't want to use the 3 words. They're kind of like Voldemort. There's not. But it's so. If you look at this arc, I think that's why people look back on it and they kind of try to ignore. Like I do. I almost have ridden one day or one. Oh my god, I'm trying to say it, but I can't. I've ridden it out of existence because it is such a disappointing aspect, especially this story. I get why they did it because they wanted a reset, but at that point, you just go, you just start over and do a new continuity, James Bond style.
Well, it's almost in the sense of just like, you knew where this is going. Did you write yourself? You wrote yourself into a hole, and that was the way out at that point. That's such a cheap way of doing it at that point. There could be other ways, but anyways, I don't want to talk anymore about that.
One day we'll have to have a discussion on that. But
I don't want to talk about
it. And I think the other thing you point out, it was good seeing Tony get that panel. Like, oh, I hope this works out, because I do think in this, opposed to the movie, I think the comic version of Tony Stark is a bit more villainous. He's not a villain, but I think he is a bit more on the.
You're right.
He's a bit more on the harsher, like, eventually, especially as we go along, I'm going to do this and it has to get done. Where even in the middle of Civil War, the movie, they have this big fight and he's already questioning it. He sees Rhodey down, where it feels like Tony Stark in that movie, obviously something happens at the end of that movie and he gets rejuvenized, be like, screw it. But he's not doing that because of the law. He's doing that because, you killed my mom. Where it feels like in Civil War, the issues, and we'll talk about them more, the further it goes along, the more annoyed and upset he gets. And like, we need to do it my way and my way is going to work. And I'm trying to save you all, but you're just not listening. So I have to do it for you. Where in the movie, he is a bit more wavering. I feel is a bit more tougher on it. And it's not a pro or con. I'm just saying like kind of the differences of adaptations.
But I think the adaptation of this with Tony is that we see it in Iron Man 1. He is a weapons dealer. At that point, and then when he sees where his weapons have done and changes the course of his life, he has always tried to do better. And he with Ultron, that was his idea. The Ultron, the
suit of armor around the world.
Suit of armor around the world. We see his, and he wants to, and he brings it up again in Endgame. The suit of armor around the world. This was my plan. This was we're going to protect us, and we didn't do it. He always has been one to beat himself up. But you're right. I think the comic, we see the scene, but we don't see enough of that building towards it. And during this, he does appear more villainous, and that again, you gotta, that's the writing at that point. They want people to kind of see exactly what it is. But you're right. I think MCU did a good job of making that a little more clear and a little bit more, he's not fully there, but he knows it could be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I like it, going back to the Spider-Man reveal, he's also not in his Iron Spider costume. He goes back to his original costume, and there's
symbolism.
A reason for that. Yeah, the symbolism. He wants people to know that this, if he was in in the Iron, people were saying, oh, because people were saying, oh, he's in his ninja, but it really is him because he's tied with Iron Man. Did Iron Man just, you know, find someone else to do this with? And that's hugely symbolic, but it's all about even more huge after effects. That's why I said before, the tie-ins on the after effects of this outside of the main run are just so good. In looking at, especially Jay Jonah's
He just
reaction,
faints.
it just faints at that point, and it continues. It continues to each issue. Only 2 issues in, they were able. You thought issue 1 could up the ante. Well, issue 2 just really up the ante, and like we said, I think the Spider-Man reveal is even bigger than what happened in issue 1.
Yeah.
So,
No, I agree.
And what's going to happen as a result of it? Because again, revealing yourself to the world, he's been a proponent, just like anyone. Wearing the mask is not to protect you; it's to protect your family. And Peter's going to see very quickly that even though they thought they could be protected at that point, it's you put a target on their back. So it's an interesting discussion.
Yeah, and I think it followed up as far as like we talked about. Yeah, there is some stuff down the line that changes, but as far as this run, it just followed up with you need to be. I remember reading it. It's already I was wanting to read issue, but it was like you need to be reading this issue to issue because you don't know what could happen and you don't want to hear it from anybody else. So between even the first issue, just the events overall, Cap turning, and then also Spider-Man revealing his identity, like you said, very beautifully done as putting the OG suit back on to show this is what I represent, and now this is what I'm representing in this future or this context. It was a big moment, and I think it was, again, if the first issue showed, hey, Civil War is something you need to keep your eye on, issue 2 was you need to read this, not just keep your eye on it, you need to be in the conversation with everybody else.
Yeah. So next week, number 3.
Number 3,
The writing continues to be top notch. The artwork is outstanding as usual.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, issue 3 next week. So yeah, we had a lot to talk about. We did not look like that at the beginning of our week, but some news, some good discussion points, Travis, as always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you say? We want to bring this ship down into the Baxter building and take some and chill out at Avengers Tower later on?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, it's our longest episode yet, so I think it's warranted for us to do that. So yeah, I thank everyone for tuning in. Like I said, in a few days, we're coming on a month, and again, we just thank you for the support. It's been a fun month, and already we're doing this in COVID time, so already now that there's been little news, whatnot, I'm excited for when we get really in the thick of things and we get Black Widow to talk about, an Eternals trailer. We're gonna have a good time, and I've had a really good time so far. So Chris, I thank you for just this month. I'm excited for the future. You can find me, Travis B. Snail, at all my links there. That's where I am at GeekVerse. That's where I am on here. I guessed on stuff you can check out last week. I guessed it on Slice of Film with Katie. Talk about La La Land, one of my favorite movies. In the future, like I said, Flashpoint. Check that on Patreon. GeekVerse, we're doing a Christopher Nolan retrospective. This week we're dropping Insomnia, kind of a movie that everyone kind of forgets about with Christopher Nolan. He did the Al Pacino, Robin Williams ones, but it's a great one. Tenet is delayed, so our retro, there might be a chance that we do the entire retro and the movie gets delayed till the fall, but hey, it's done, and you can listen to it and enjoy it because, Nolan has some great films to talk about. So yeah, that's what I got going on. Come talk to me about any topics we had here. Chris, where can I find you?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on Twitter at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the network, Geek Ultimate Alliance Network, on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Continue to tweet at us, DM the show, respond to our polls, put out your own questions and stuff out there. As you see, we've read a good number of them today. And if you find the instance, and if you're liking what you're seeing and hearing, give us a rate, give us a, any kind of, we want a 5-star review, any kind of feedback. Love to see that on Apple Podcasts. And as always, listeners, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. And as always, Excelsior, true believers.